We're here in Mississippi on stage 2 of the Bushnell Grand Slam Pursuit. Here with Phillip Culpepper, which Spring Thunder and the Hunting Club, and also Jesse Highling, which is the VP of Sales and Marketing at Retay. Guys, we had a great couple days here in Mississippi. We were successful, and we'll get into that here momentarily, but kind of recap the last few days for us, Phillip. And
we'll say we had a good day. How about that?
Yes,
because
it was a good day.
it was a brutal couple 2.5 days, and then today it all turned around. But it was, obviously this early season type stuff is very, weather is key, it seems like, especially with turkeys, because it's just, you never know, because the lead up to it, you always got that chance of a cold front, rain, which we got everything, tornadoes the day before y'all got here. So, when it turned off cold, it kind of just shut everything down. But today the sun finally came out and, things turned around, which it actually, we weren't supposed to have as good of weather, I think, as we did today, but we did. So it all turned around. But again, just staying after it, and not quitting on them. So, they're here. You got to pretend like there's one behind every tree, and that's what we did.
So last week we were with Michael Waddell and Brad Shore with Realtree, and they both said, "Oh, you're going to Mississippi for step 2 of your Grand Slam." And they're like, "Wow, you're a glutton for punishment." Why is Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, toms, turkeys, why are they so hard? Why is this such a huge challenge for guys to come down here and hunt and bag a turkey, even when the weather's great?
Yeah, it is, because it seems like there's only here in the deep South, I call it, kind of excluding Florida. I guess North Florida kind of falls into that with the Easterns, but for whatever reason, that backwards L of Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, the Easterns there seem to be the toughest that I've ever hunted. And there's a lot of turkey hunters down south. I think that has something to do with it, but they get a lot of pressure. But even on land that's not hunted a ton by other people, it's just it's almost like they're a whole different subspecies in themselves, because it can't compare to an Eastern from Iowa or an Eastern from Kansas, wherever, because it's just they're tough to hunt. And it seems like you only have that 3 or 4 day window, maybe only a 1 or 2 day window, where you can really put damage on them and get it done. But you gotta hang on to every gobble you get and pay attention to every track, every strut mark, because again it kind of played out with us. Even more so than that, I think every time they beat you up and they whoop you, you got to pay attention to that to use it against them the next time you get on them. And I think Jesse will say, that paid off, today for us this afternoon. But it's weird. It's almost like it's the elk of the South, people call it, because man, they're tough. They're tough to come by, but it's a big celebration when it happens.
Yeah, and that's a great point. In Kansas, where I've done some hunting over the last 4 or 5 years, the turkeys seem to want to get out into the fields and go eat the wheat and the milo and the corn and stuff. But here, they're completely satisfied of being in the bottoms and in that thick stuff, and that was surprising to me.
I was shocked too, because normally you get this, there's a lot of big ag fields here, and you get that much, you expect to see them. Even me and Drake were talking, I don't know how many times we'd drive by, like, man, I can't believe we ain't seen a turkey in the field yet, because you would think that they would be out in those fields, but for whatever reason, the one turkey that we found all week, the last 4 days in the field was in a cow pasture. So they weren't even in the ag fields. Whether it's a, and they do have a little bit of a hog problem down here. So I think hogs probably got something to do with it. The fact that there's probably not much for them to be milling around on out there, to where obviously, if you got cows, most of the time you got turkeys, just because they're flipping those cow patties and and going through stuff like that. So and it paid off today. But that did surprise me, that you would think, especially with the bad weather, because normally a rule of thumb is if it's raining or pretty cruddy weather, turkeys are going to get in those fields. And man, until today, we didn't see a turkey in a field, it seems like.
Yeah, no, that was shocking, going from Florida and seeing turkeys out in the field and in the roads and just everywhere. Here, it's like you had to really go look for them and really had to hear them and understand where they were coming from. So he was talking about your hunt earlier.
Absolutely.
Just walk us quickly through your hunt and you and I both talked about hunting with Phillip Culpepper, and we're really looking forward to kind of doing some of the running and gunning and talk about some of your expectations coming in and how it met it and how it was actually tougher than what you expected.
Absolutely. So knowing and watching Phillip develop through the years, when I was younger, not that there's a huge age gap, but I watched, I've watched Phillip hunt for a long time, and everybody kind of jokingly said, "Oh man, you're hunting with Phillip. You better put your running shoes on." Right. Well, we probably should have put knee pads on because we did more crawling in the past couple days than we did running anywhere. This afternoon, we had a couple birds that were out in the only time we've seen them in a field, and we had kind of got set up on them maybe 100 yards away. Downside was the bird only gobbled twice the entire time that we were on them for the about 3.5 hours. I guess. And we were at a point to where myself and we were kind of sitting there, and Drake would hear him drum, Phillip would hear him drum, and that was what we were playing off of. We were literally playing off of drums, and to the point to where we could get close enough, and then we could hear the spitting drum. But he never made a sound past that.
Yeah, when we sat down and I heard those two gobbles, I'm like, oh, game, set, match, we're done. 30. I even kind of looked at James and I'm like, we're going to be done here in a little bit, and that's what I expected. But then he shut up, and I'm like, what the hell's happening?
Yeah, we don't know how close he actually got. I think he had gotten closer.
Yeah, he closed the distance, and again, I mean, kind of a learning curve there too. Is people are like, man, they're not saying nothing, they're not responding, but I mean. And me and Drake talked about it on the ride back over here. Even especially when we were closing the gap, but every time just a soft yelp, scratching the leaves, that turkey was spitting drum, and that's him. I mean, to him, that close to quarters, because that turkey was within 80 yards, just the terrain as thick as it was. That's him. That might as well be a gobble to him and to him, because he's calling to her. He's saying, here I am type deal, to where. And again, that was the sealed the deal. We were able to move on and doing that. But I think that's a key note for folks to pay attention to is listen for those sounds whenever you think a turkey's in tight, because they're not always going to come in there and just blowing your hat off gobbling. So I mean, it's any little, and I've learned the hard way on stuff like that, where any little edge you can get to pay attention to what they're doing, knowing they're still there, they're where they're at, and even pay attention to if he's strutting from one end of the ridge to the other. If it's a 50-yard circle, he's strutting back and forth on that line. Pay attention to what he is and where he's at to make that adjustment, which is what we ended up doing and getting to once he went down one end of that ridge, we came and got, and we were there when he came back. So
yeah, Jesse was telling us in the truck when we went into the city, and I thought it was really fascinating how you guys were using your sounds and the turkey sounds for movement. And talk through that and how, because a lot of times you're probably on your belly and crawling for what 400 or 500 yards.
Yeah,
or so?
we put a pretty good length on them, and some pretty it was thick. I mean, it was
it was some thick stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, normally we made a lot.
Was,
we'll say that we made a lot, and there was 3 of us.
Yeah.
And I'm 6'2". And I was by far the smallest individual in pursuit of this, I can tell you. Because,
so you have to make yourself small.
I was by far, so there was a lot of noise, a lot of rustling. But
covering the tracks, though, was impressive. And that's something I can say right here, to learn from that, right? Being from Maryland, we have to cover some big open ground, so it's a little bit different than having to move through, thick terrain. The moving 15 feet at a time, and you clucking and purring and just trying to cover your sound up, and then as we made that move, it was 10 feet at a time. Right. You would get up in front of me. As soon as you started scratching, you cover my sound. Right. And then you cover your own sound going back through it, and you'd be cutting, and and then as soon as you stop and start scratching, I'd be able to move up. So that's something that a lot of people don't ever get to see firsthand, and that's what it's incredible to be able to be behind that, right? Right. To be able to follow that out and learn those tactics that a lot of people may never.
Well, and again, it's a situational thing too, because we luckily had the lay of the land. There was a rolling hill, and we got down below to where it's not like he's on an open ridge and just hearing everything, because it is kind of a muffled, and again, that big ridge right there is what allowed us to get up there. But I mean, it's like me and Drake, again, we were talking on the way home, and he was like, man, because we made a lot of noise. I mean, there was a lot of I mean, there was some elephants coming toward them, you know. So,
6 inches of rain
right
in the past week, and there
yeah,
was
and
not
it
a
dried
single
out. I can promise you, all the leaves were dried
in the
out.
entire place.
But that's, you know, I told Drake, I was like, man, if you think of a flock of turkeys though, when they're scratching around, I mean, turkeys make a lot of noise. I mean, you know, so it's like that soft yelping like a hen feeding, like there's another flock coming, and I can promise you, they thought there was a flock because we were in full force.
Yeah, when you guys shot, we could hear, it just sounded like World War III was taking off because it just busted out of there and just I was like, what the heck? So I was waiting for the second shot because I thought maybe you had a chance to get a shot too, but it was just like crack of all the different branches and stuff and all the birds going through. But speaking of shooting, you know, talk about, you know, you said you were on one leg and you know, knowing the gun like you do and seeing how it patterns with the shell and the red dot, talk about how that confidence, you know, and how that helped you in that situation, because you weren't in a great shooting position. You probably weren't stabilized, but there was a lot of confidence in your weapon or your gun that you knew what was going to happen.
Definitely. So, I mean, you know, one of the things, and I take a lot of time on the range to be able to work, and I'm a pattern junkie. I love to be able to pattern guns. I love to be able to mix and match choke tubes and shells and everything else. Knowing the limitations is key. Knowing, I think, the personal limitations is even bigger. I never want to stretch myself out too far. And we talked about it. Like, I've patterned the guns at 80 yards and seen what it does. And it kind of gives you a little thing in the back of your mind. But I don't want to ever be that guy. I don't need to do that, right? Because I think, you know, especially this week when we took some longer shots. You know, you were at, you know, 40 plus again, and
y'all were shooting the 20 gauge.
And we are shooting the 20 gauge, yeah. But, you know, smaller bore diameter is one thing on the 20 gauge that the 12 gauge, you know, we talked about a little bit. The difference between 12 and 20, velocity is the same, shot size is the same. So really, the only thing that you're losing is actually the pellet count itself. So what you gain with a 20 gauge is actually the bore diameter. So you're actually choking it down a little bit more to create a little bit more of a pattern at distance that you're going to be able to carry than you will with a 12 gauge in some instances when you're, you know, at 40 and plus. With our guns being already drilled from the factory with a forcing cone in them, it actually allows it to condition that pattern before it ever gets to a choke tube to really align things and allow the choke tube to kind of give it its, you know, ample pattern down range, because it's not, you know, we always use the adage of if you throw a bunch of golf balls down an open hallway, they just bounce all over the place. If you take and neck them down by two boards, they're going to form file up and they're going to go out that hallway, you know, pretty smoothly. The same thing goes with a forcing cone, and it helps in shot pattern, but it also helps in your carry distance and things like that.
That's a great analogy. I've never thought about it that way. That's really cool. This is the first time I've hunted with a 20 gauge, and so, you know, stage 2 of the Grand Slam series that we're putting together with Bushnell, you know, shot the first one at 47 yards, didn't flop. I mean, he just bop. This guy at just over 40 yards, he did a somersault after I hit him, and just seeing
like a defense load hit him.
Yeah, and then seeing the impact of that shot into his chest and neck and head. I mean, it's just completely. Absolutely. I've got more confidence now in this 20 gauge than I think I've ever had in any of my shotguns that I've ever shot. And I've hunted quail and pheasant and duck and all sorts of stuff. So it's awesome to see this combination that we have with Federal's TSS, the Bushnell Red Dot, and Retay. So, you know, now we're talking a little bit about our hunt that happened a little bit earlier in the day, and it was very fortuitous that, you know, we were told that Perry's son was driving by and said, "Hey, there's a turkey near the camp," and so we hurried up, got over here. Kind of walk us through your thoughts and kind of knowing this area like you do. And what you kind of expected, and then just walk us through that whole.
Well, yeah, I mean, so you know, we were obviously getting skunked pretty bad. We were looking for an icebreaker, and you know, and Drew had seen a turkey, you know, and so we were like, man, the turkey we were on wasn't doing anything, so we thought we were on, you know, so we said, well, we might as well try it. But again, this is the first time I've ever turkey hunted over here, so I came and deer hunted a few times. So, but again, it was just those situational kind of a playbook you go to of what are we going to do. And, you know, obviously turkey's out there with hens. You're going to, you know, odds of you calling away from those hens are slim to none. You know, and he was 200 yards from us, and so, you know, he wasn't strutting or doing anything. So, you know, yelped at him, cut at him a little bit, got him excited. He started gobbling, strutting. So, again, we give him, 10, 15 minutes, he's hitting coming. So we show him the decoy, which was mistake number one, you know, of the hunt. So, again, you know, down here in the South, you never know. It's like again, had we been in Florida, he probably would have run us over. But it's just something about that sixth sense. You never know with these turkeys down here. And, man, he folded his wings and it was like getting out of there. I was like, man, I just screwed it up. I should have just waited or used the lay of the land. Well, then he calmed down and we moved in there on him.
And right as you showed the decoy, I was sitting next to Drake, and Drake goes, "Oh, that wuss." I mean,
yeah.
He didn't say that exact words, but it kind of made me chuckle. But I'm like, man, that's really sucks.
Oh yeah.
And then you looked at Drake and I was like, "Shed your stuff. We're going
we
after him."
Go.
And I'm like, whoa.
Well, and it's you know, kind of ironic. You know, both y'all's hunts it was one of those. It was to the point of saying, "All right, we're at the point of no return."
Right.
So, all right, traditional things ain't working. So then again, we pushed the envelope way more than I normally would have had Jesse not had a 2:30 flight. You know, you had to leave at 2:30 this morning in a few hours to go fly out. So I was like, it's now or never. I was like, you know, I was prepared to completely bust those turkeys, which in a traditional setting, I was like, no, let's just wait. We'll come back in the morning. But it was like, if he's going to kill a Mississippi turkey, it's go time. We got to go.
Do or die. Here we go.
And again, that was the same deal. The turkey you killed, to where he shot away from the decoy. And I was like, well, look, you know, we finally found one. We're seeing a turkey out here that we know we can kill. So let's use the lay of the land. There was enough roll, so we got to just go and see what we can, see if we can make it happen.
And so we took off our vests. We got our top layer off. I took my strap off my gun. I mean, we were being as mobile as we could. And one of the things, I was thinking through as we were doing this, we belly crawled for the first 50 yards to get out from their side and under the fence and then down on the tree line. And my first intuition was go into the middle of the riverbed where there was gravel and it would have made a lot less noise. And I asked you about that. So walk through that, because I think that's one thing that a lot of us hunters would be like, no, go into the middle and go. But I
get to your lowest point. Yeah.
No,
and again, that was knowing where they were, exactly where we last saw them. And that's why it's such a kind of a hustle and bustle to get to where you got to get from point A to point B, because when you know where they're at, well, knowing that, the way there is a little bit of a rolling hill, I knew if we got down too low, it was going to be, they could cover less ground and see that middle point of that bottom, versus if we were tucked up and underneath it, we could get, if they were drifting out of that field, I knew we could get up there to them. So, like on the walk out, me and you talked, I said, I was willing to sacrifice some noise, making a little more noise to know we were covered, visually, to where we could get up there, and so, and again, turkeys, when they're feeding and stuff, make a lot of noise, to where I always just try to, yelp a little bit, and especially when he really started biting, gobbling, to where I was like, look, you don't want to make too much noise, but you want them to hear you saying that there's hens up there scratching around, there's more turkeys up there. So, I mean, again, it may not happen 9 times out of 10, but it happened today. So, I mean, that's what matters.
So talk through your techniques in the hunt with Jesse and my hunt, on your techniques of calling and stuff, because I've been around a lot of calls and hearing guys call, but I think you have a little bit of a uniqueness, and I know you and I talked earlier, it's a trial and error and you've learned a lot over the years, but talk about some instances of when I'm going to use a purr or a cluck or a kiki run or whatever. I know there's a lot of different things, but you have kind of a distinct way you call, and talk through that. And then when we used the decoy and went right at him, you also then started calling a little differently there as well, and had him coming at us.
Well, so I normally, like, it's always, everybody relates it to like checking the temperature of a turkey. Like, what's he doing, to where it's like, you don't want to get over aggressive, and I call a lot, especially if I get a turkey talking back, to where, but it's kind of like a conversation. If you strike it off with somebody and you're talking to him and you hit it off and so whenever he really started biting, just kind of a hen, just kind of a searching, kind of an excited yelp searching, when he's answering that, one of my main things I try to always do is just, whether it's kind of, not too much, you don't want to start cackling and everything, but just, excited, cutting and yelping, to where don't just, like that turkey, for example, when he got fired up and you can kind of get him cranked up, when he's answering you, don't just stop. I always respond back to him. So when he's answering me, I'm answering him back, to where you get a conversation going, to where if you can get him cranked up, that's where I think you really, because again, he was gobbling a little bit, but we really got him fired up right there when we got in there tight on him, and he actually pulled that hill and came up there to us and left his hens. So, but then fast forward to, he's looking up there looking for a hen. Well, then whenever we were crawling up there with the decoy, you're just doing it's a fight and purr when the turkeys come to a fight, that and kind of a little whine they do when they're sizing something up, and that's, and actually I've learned that from Michael. From Waddell, from doing the, shaking the decoy, giving them some movement. Because, it's just kind of like when you see turkeys fighting, they throw jabs. They're pretty much throwing punches,
Right.
So that and that little bit of that whine, it just, it's the most realism you can get, helps. So, I've just seen it work to where, and that more of that whiny type. Because if you'll go back and look at even older videos, turkey hunting videos, All Stars of Spring from 20 years ago, even the old foam Jake decoys, turkeys are doing that.
Right.
It's just a matter of dissecting what they're doing and trying to, replicate it. And I don't know really how to replicate it except listen to it and just try to make that noise, because by no means of what I try to do is sounds just like them, but I know it's something that from a distance comes off as that it sounds similar, so whatever it does just trips or trigger.
So one of the things that, I think was a common core element for Jesse and my hunt is the persistence and the patience and never giving up. And I think that's the piece that I will use going into, my last two hunts to pursue this Grand Slam, is not to give up and talk about that, because I think that's one of the things that a lot of us as hunters, we get in situations where we're like, we busted him, it's time to go on. But we stuck with him because he did come over that hill. We thought he was done. You guys thought he was no longer out in that food plot, went down, but you kept with that persistence. Yes, we hadn't seen a lot of turkeys. We hadn't been on them. So yes, we're like, okay, we got to strike. But talk about some of that, and then also jump in as well, because I think that's one thing that you also said is, hunting in Maryland, you've got to be persistent and patient and really understand what's going on.
As bad as the first 2 days were with the weather and everything else, we were constantly on birds. From the day that we, from the first hour that we got here. Now, granted, we weren't, set up working birds, but we were on birds constantly, and that's just that's an accreditation of what you do, because you're not going to give up. You're mad at them, and
right.
I say that all the time. Like
you got to go with a war mindset.
Exactly.
It's like fighting Taliban.
Yeah.
You got to go in there and just be committed to it. And I think the easiest way I can wrap my mind around it is think of like busting a turkey, or unless you see them fly off, you got to realize we're hunting a bird that's got a pea-sized brain.
Right.
To where if you give him 15 minutes, and even if you got to make a 200 or 300 yard loop on him, the odd you can get back on him. And so knowing that possibility is there is what I'm always like, okay, if he's there, there's a chance. And on that, they've got such big personalities to where every turkey's got his own little bubble, whether it's decoying or whether it's getting close enough to call to make him trip his trigger. No different than the turkey you ended up killing. We killed him, ultimately with a decoy, but we got in there tight when we had him in gun range the first time, and we tripped his trigger calling, and he came up in there looking for us. Right. To where they've got enough personalities to where if you keep that in mind, saying each one's different, they're not all the same, to where, okay, well, this another 10 yards could make it all change. It could all be worth it. To where, and I think that's what you got to keep in mind, is where you can. That's the difference in deer hunting and turkey hunting in my eyes. Is turkey hunting, if you got enough persistence and drive, you may go through 15 of them, but you're going to find one that may run you over. and you can make something happen. You just got to have the perseverance and drive to do it, you know, and it's just a matter of just sticking with it.
So, you know, a lot of new gun owners in the market in the last year. Something like 9 million new gun owners. If someone wanted to get into turkey hunting, you know, what are those top 2-3 things that you would suggest? And I'll let you guys both talk through it, because that is one thing that I think we as the industry and hunters and stuff, we have to start reaching out to those young hunters, because as people like me start aging up and aging out, you know, my dad's no longer hunting. I mean, he's at that point where he's like, yep, hanging up my gun, I'm done. I just can't get out and hunt anymore. And there's more of those getting out of the industry than that's coming in. How would somebody go about, you know, getting into turkey hunting, and what are some of those things that we can help them do?
Yeah, I mean, well, you want to.
Well, no, I mean on the gun side of things, you know, obviously that's kind of my world. But you know, one of the differences I think between turkey hunting and you know my background in waterfowl is not an easy thing to get into. You know, there's finances involved. There's duck dogs. There's trucks to pull boats. There's decoy spreads. You know, end of the day, you slap on a good pair of camouflage, and you can kind of go turkey hunt.
Right.
And it's not something that you have to have, you know, 5 guys to split the financial burden of. So, you know, the gun world is a little bit different because there's still specialties. If you wanted to, you know, some guys don't prefer 20 gauges. Some guys prefer pumps on, you know, on turkey hunts. But you know, the optics the same way. Some guys, you know, shy away from optics. But I think at the end of the day, we've proven, you know, as I did not grow up with optics on turkey guns.
I did not either.
Yeah, and it gives you a little bit of an edge on things, and as people get into hunting a little bit more, turkey hunting should be one of the easier things to get into. Now, it's not the easiest to do, but
Right.
it's an easy avenue to get into hunting.
Well, absolutely. Like I said, and obviously we've broken down these hunts and you know, the specs of them and everything, but it's like, end of the day, turkey hunting, if you got a slate call or a box call and can cluck and yelp, you can go kill a turkey. I mean, that's, you know, I mean, you can go do it between the public land that's out there or somebody you know that's got something that's, man, I don't turkey hunt. I mean, just ask around, you know, and just talk to folks to where, you know.
A lot of deer leases don't have.
Oh
turkey
yeah, I
hunters
mean,
on
you know,
them,
so
yeah.
it's, you know, and on top of that, it's like now the digital side of things, you can look up so much and learn so much, you know, of you know, because you don't hear about anybody buying a book anymore reading about turkey hunting. But I mean, Lord knows they're out there. But I mean, you know, it's just. But at the same time, it's not. You know, and that's the challenge to all of us, I think, as turkey hunters, is take somebody who's never been. Take whether they're an adult or a kid, just get them outside and take them just to introduce them to the sport, because you never know. Again, it only takes one time to light that fire.
That's right.
And that's
And if
that's
there's one
another
thing
that's
to light
another
the
leg
fire,
to the sport.
If there's one thing to light the fire, it's to hear a bird hammer off early in the morning.
Oh, 100%.
To a person who's never heard that before, can hook a person.
Oh yeah.
Immediately.
I mean, and you never know. Like I said, you could see a muddy road and see a track, and they walk around the corner and see a turkey strutting, even though they bust them. Well, I mean, that's just saying, man, he just made that track, and holy cow. I mean, you never know what fire you're going to light with somebody.
And that's a learning moment, and then they can build
Yeah.
upon that. And I think that's why I've become so enamored with turkey hunting, is a lot of it is strategy, but you make this mistake today, you're probably not going to make it tomorrow, and you're going to learn.
Right,
from
you
that.
got to
And
have
so
a
you
bag
build
of
that
tricks
foundation.
and carry it with you, and
That's
pick
right.
it up along the way. You know, I mean, it's
And speaking of tips and tricks, so 50% way through my Grand Slam for the season. You know, I still have the Rio in Texas, and then the Merriman, Montana, and I'm getting to go with some incredible people that, you know, work with us at Bushnell or that are ambassadors. Completely blessed and very lucky and fortunate to be in my position to do this. But that's why I'm doing this. That's why we're recording this and putting it on video, so that I can share that, so that people can hear you and talk about and listen to what, you know, you have to say. So with that being said, you know, 2 more left. What are some of, you know, things I need to think about for these last 2 hunts? You know, what are some of those things that I need to think about and you know, take those learnings into these next 2 hunts?
well, I can say, I think, you know, most people would agree, you got the 2 toughest ones out of the way. You got your Osceola and your Eastern, you know, and again, you went down to the deep South Florida to get your the swamp turkey.
That's right.
And then, you're down here in Mississippi getting the Eastern, so they're the truest forms of Eastern Osceola you can get. But I mean, first of all, just because I'm from the South, take plenty of cold weather stuff to when you go to Montana for your marriage, because you never know what's going to hit out there.
Right.
And and the good thing about probably the two things I would think between a Rio and a Merriam's is Merriam's are going to yelp a lot, so you can't hardly out yelp them. As far as you do more damage out there, I think, by not calling enough sometimes. And because it's not like around here to where it's just you almost got to keep their attention span short. You got to keep their attention, and the Rios is normally get the most high pitch box or slate call you got, because it's such a, not only is it good for carrying in that flat Texas country, but those Rios are a lot more of a high pitch type yelp. So
Okay.
as far as striking turkeys up and for what they like to hear. So man, like I said, you're not. You may have it done for April. I don't know when but you're off to a heck of a start.
Yeah, no, I'm completely blessed and lucky and fortunate, and the partners that have also been working with us, Retay and Bushnell, obviously I work for, the Red Dot, and then our sister company in Federal, the TSS turkey loads. I mean, I've been hunting since I was in high school and pattern shotguns and stuff, and this TSS load is it's a game changer.
It is.
It is completely just incredible. But Bandit has provided us with awesome clothing, and so it's been awesome and just a great experience. And I really thank you guys for everything you've done. And Phillip, thanks for coaching me and mentoring me and helping me on this
And
trip.
again, I apologize if it got a little too.
No, dude, I love it.
If I went over the limit, because I have been, I've
Things got a little
I'm sure there's a few friendships I've lost, that just people like, man, I thought I liked turkey hunting, but not with you. So I do take it intense, and it's like Eddie Salter said, you got to pretend like there's one behind every tree if you're going, consistently get them killed, especially in the South. But I mean, again, thank you for hanging in there, and for y'all both coming down. It's been a heck of a week.
Oh, it has.
I appreciate it very much.
And you ever want to guest on your Spring Thunder or Hunt Club? I will do it again in a heartbeat. You did not hurt my feelings one bit. It was so fun, and I kind of had an expectation, like we were talking earlier about, because I've seen a lot of your shows and stuff. But man, just getting in it and doing it. I know I need to drop some COVID weight before I come out again, and I know going to Montana, I'm like, I better start walking or I'm going to be needing an oxygen tank. But no, it's been fantastic. And, Waddy and Brad and, Jesse and you, it's just been so awesome. And that's why I want to share this with everyone out there and share my experience. And yes, I know I've got access to the best stuff in the world, but man, you can do it for a lot cheaper. But take all this stuff, as folks are watching us, and learn something from it, because that's what our intention is here, is try to keep it entertaining and authentic and get people excited about it.
Well, and again, that's the thing about turkey hunting, that is I've always is my rule of thumb is you got to learn as much from what don't work as what does work, and again, it's whatever tip bag that goes in, you got to keep always carrying with you to realize, look, this, that's how you become better, because that's the thing about it is, I don't care who you are, is every time you go out in the woods, if it's for an hour or all day, you got to come back with something to put in the tip bag to learn from it, and again, it's what you're doing is a cool deal in itself in one season killing slam, but to be able to have this like it is and have it recorded is really cool, to be able to have it all on video. And I mean, that's a special thing. So I mean, I'm pulling for you, buddy.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So you did touch on one thing with your partners that are in this hunt with the Grand Slam and the financial aspect of it. We talked a little bit. One thing that we with the setup of your gun and the Red Dot from Bushnell and then the TSS from Federal, it becomes a pricey game when you're setting up a gun, right? So a lot of times we hear a ton of guys who say they don't like setting up an optic because it's so expensive to go out and shoot, 2 boxes of shells. Well, one of the things that we've kind of created in the way that I set up the guns for anything that we do is there's nothing wrong with shooting a light target load first at 25 yards to get yourself dialed in. We call it, I was talking with a couple guys, Cody Kelly and those guys, the 5 and 2 rule. 5 target loads and 2 TSS can get your gun set up any day of the week. And that's kind of what I live by a little bit. We shoot light loads. Everybody's got a target load laying in their truck at some point. Get your gun dialed in with your red dot at 25 yards to where you need it to be. Maybe I've come to find about 4 to 6 inches low with your target, loads. We'll put your TSS right on, and then you can move that from your 25 back to your 40, so you're not spending $100 on, or TSS loads.
Plus, it's a little better on the shoulder.
It is.
Yeah, yeah. But that's the thing is that 20 gauge, because I do have access to federal shells, I think we went out and shot 5-10 shells. I had no problem. Whereas when I was patterning my old shotguns and some of them, man, I'd come back and my shoulder was black and blue and I couldn't hold up
Busted
my arm
eye socket.
Yeah. But now, that 20 gauge, and I'm just like, man, this is just an awesome combination. And, in our Bushnell red dot, $250. The Retay shotgun for a semi-automatic, inertia-driven shotgun that's comparable to others, it's about half the price.
$1,100 on the shelf is what you're going to find that turkey gun for.
But people can get into this with a $250 pump gun.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
You guys are coming out with pumps.
We do.
So I think that's one of the things is, you don't have to have a red dot. You don't have to shoot TSS. You can go and get a Federal 5 or 6 shot, and you can get those for $15, $20 a box. And they're good shells, but man, TSS is a game changer. But you can buy 5 TSS for $30, $40. Yep. Take 2 to pattern, 1 or 2 to shoot your turkey, and that's all you need for the season. So it's been a great kind of experience to see how all this is. And you're right, that's a great tip about the, just regular shots. But so to wrap it up, I want to thank you guys for everything. It's been an awesome opportunity. And any parting words or anything that you guys want to mention while we're here?
I'm just shoot straight and good luck and take some clothes. But it's
take some warm
clothes.
Man,
you had no quit in you, so you keep that.
Yeah.
You keep that attitude going, you'll have it done before you know it. So
talking to Waddy last week, he's like, Jared, I don't think you realize what you've signed up for with Phillip going to Mississippi because one, those birds are harder than heck to shoot and bag one. He goes, and don't give up. He goes, you may leave Mississippi without getting your Eastern. You're gonna have to figure out how you're gonna get your Eastern some other way, but you may not get one because they are harder than hell to get down in Mississippi. So
they're tough. He was right.
Yeah, it was.
It
tough.
Took us. It was hard just to find them.
Yeah,
once we found them.
And that's the mentality I went through, and I'm like, no, we're not going to give up. We're going to hunt until the very last minute, even to Sunday if we have to. And so no, it was a great experience, and man. But now I think we may have jinxed ourselves because now the Rio and the Miriam is going to be harder than what we've done. So,
I hope not.
But I hope not. So,
well, we appreciate you, having the trust in us, and this is a journey. I mean, it's a cool thing, and a lot of people are never going to get to do it. But taking the trust in Retay and to be alongside you for the part of this, we appreciate that very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Heck yeah, awesome. Man, it's been an honor. It truly has. And again, on top of this and the partnership with Bushnell, so I mean. I'm looking forward to the future and many more turkey seasons.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.